Good day everyone, I am Shane C. Aure and now I will discuss brief history about demonological theory. What is demonological theory? Demonological theory. This is one of the most earliest theories in criminology. In ancient times, people believed that evil spirits or demons entered the human soul and made them commit sins. This was the earliest explanation given regarding crime and criminal behavior. Demonological theory, it was believed that a person did not commit crimes of his own free will, but because he was under the influence of evil. Way back then, terms like demons, witches, and wendigo were used for people who had turned criminals under demonic influence. The society thought that it all happened due to evil spirits. Supernatural powers were considered the best explanation behind crime and sin. Who is criminal during demonological theory? Demonological theory would tell you he's a man possessed. This medieval definition painted him as a sinner taken over by demons that work to manifest in him the evil root of humanity. Crime here is seen as mythic and felonies as moral sin. Now let's move on to preclassical or demonological school. Preclassical or demonological school is the most ancient theory of crime. According to this theory, a man by nature is simple and the crime committed by the man is in a handwork of evil. During this period, Europe was characterized by a dominance of in-religion state activities. The concept of crime was vague, not clearly defined, and obscure, not discovered or known about. Preclassical or demonological school believed that there are two kinds of forces in the world, and those are God and Satanic. They believe that God force keep us away from crime and help us to do good deeds, while Satanic force distracts man from the right path and makes him commit a crime. It makes man reckless, loses the sense of morality, and removes the fear of God from the individual. Such a person becomes unable to foresee the consequences of his actions. Now let's talk about the punishment to criminal during this period, which is called Salem Witch Trial. Way back then, if the criminals are simply human beings that cannot control their demon's possession, then they are subject entirely to the supernatural. For this reason, punishment to criminals were often based to the divine interference. Accused witches during the Salem witch trials would be put to dangerous tests, and if they survived them, then God wanted them to live. As time passes by, this theological approach to crime has mostly disappeared out of the society with the coming of enlightenment. During those times, due to lack of education, no proper explanation was available for criminal behavior. In the ancient times, science and technology had not advanced as much, and therefore everything evil was committed under the influence of demons and satanic powers. As of now, still demonology is not a suitable or proper explanation for criminal behavior since, instead of relying on real factors, there are unreal or mythical facts in its foundation. Several theories have followed demonology that provide newer and better perspective on crime. However, demonology has not still grown totally irrelevant. In many parts of the world, people still believe in the existence of evil spirits. Such people or communities try to explain our criminal behavior as the wrongful doings of Satan. This is the end of my brief discussion about demonological theory. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Our topic for today is all about the brief explanation of positivist theory. Now, our discussion will only revolve to the key points of this topic. Other positivist theory is the term positivism. What is positivism? Positivism refers to the method of analysis based on the collection of observable scientific facts. Now, class, when we say observable, it is perceiving something and register it as something significant or important factor that could help in our study or research. It means that the proponents under the positivist theory didn't just conclude their findings with just their mere own opinion, but instead went through the process of scientific process in order to come up with reliable results. Proponents under the positivist theory are the so-called Holy Three of modern criminology. wherein determinism of positivist theory was divided into three major aspects. The first one is the biological determinism, second is the social determinism, and third is the psychological determinism. So, biological determinism. Under biological determinism is Cesar Lombroso. But first, let us define the word biological. When we say biological, it is connected with the natural processes of living things, whether it could be a person's body or his or her physical appearance. Just like in Cesar Lombroso's theory of atavism, wherein he argues that there is an array of stigmata or markers in criminals which could be a putative evidence with their criminality. Second is social determinism. Now class, when we say social, it relates to the society and its organization. Under social determinism is Enrico Ferri, wherein he rejected the beliefs of biological determinism because Enrico Ferri believes that a person commits a crime because of his environment that pushes him to commit this certain crime. The third and the last one is psychological determinism. Now class, when we say psychological, it is related to the mental or emotional state of a person. And under psychological determinism is Rafael Garofalo, wherein he believes that a person is committing a crime because of moral anomalies that might be going on in their mind. And that class is the end of our brief discussion of our topic for today, positivist theory. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Giselle A. Bautista, and the topic that I'm going to discuss is all about classical theory. Now, let's define what is classical theory. Classical theory argues that crime is caused by natural forces or forces of this world, such as the absence of effective punishments. Classical theory was developed in reaction to the harsh, corrupt, and often arbitrary nature of the legal system in the 17th. Classical criminology uses the idea of free will to explain that offenders choose to engage in crime, and that the best way to control crime is to deter offenders and make it uncomfortable and unprofitable for them to offend. The two figures best associated with classical criminology are Cesar Beccaria and Jeremy Bentham. They are seen as the most important Enlightenment thinkers in the area of classical thinking. Besides their various philosophical perspectives, they also strive to reduce the harshness in 18th century judicial system. Beccaria was concerned with establishing a more rational and humane system of social control. Bentham developed an approach that was concerned with the way of individuals weighed pleasure and pain when deciding whether to commit deviant acts. Another basic concern of deterrence research concerns the accuracy of knowledge of the severity of various sanctions, a belief that one will cut and swiftly and punish drastically in needed in order to deterrence theory to work. Akers and Sellers conclude that certainty of punishment is the most powerful aspect of deterrence theory. According to rational choice theory, people weigh the costs and benefits of their decisions and act in their own best interest. McShane state that offenders make two types of decision when contemplating crime. The involvement decisions, in which they determine whether they will engage in a particular offense, continue an offense, or desist from it. And event decisions, about what tactics to use when committing an offense. Some criminal justice administrators believe that shock deterrence tactics will influence youth to obey the law and avoid the justice system. There are 3 shock deterrence programs. First is shock incarceration, scared straight type programs, and boot camp prison. Now, let's define shock incarceration program. It is a 90-day program designed as an alternative to traditional incarceration, providing a therapeutic environment where young, non-violent offenders receive substance abuse treatment, academic education, and other help to promote their reintegration into the community. Next is Scared Straight type program. It aims to deter at-risk teenagers or juvenile delinquent from committing future offenses. Boot Camp Prison. It is a short-term prison programs run like military basic training for young offenders, adult and youthful felons. Overall, the classical school focuses on preventing crimes than punish the people who commit them. This is the end of my brief discussion about classical theory. Thank you.
The Neoclassical Theory. The Neoclassical theory is the extended version of the classical theory wherein the behavioral sciences gets included into the management. This approach is often referred to as an behavioral theory of organization or human relations approach in organizations. In the other words, neoclassical theory conceded that certain factors such as insanity might inhibit the exercise of free will. It is also mitigating circumstances as legitimative grounds for diminished responsibility. Gabriel Tardicrime is a result of many conditions that have ultimately influenced on the perpetrator to commit it. Representative of neoclassical criminology theory. Gabriel Tarde published the book Penal Philosophy in 1890. He is also a French sociologist and founder of Neoclassical Criminology School. The core assumptions of neoclassical theory is that behavior is rational. The individuals have identical preferences and the crime is risky behavior and risk therefore affects behavior. The core propositions of neoclassical theory is that the crime determined by actual risk and benefits of behavior. The crime can be discouraged by raising its price. The cost is tied to punishment, certainty and or severity, mere deterrence, some attentions to labor market losses. The focus of the neoclassical theory is that the primary on property crimes, fewer incorporate index offenses, and the difference in behavior due to differences in choices sets. The neoclassical school continues the traditions of the classical school wherein the framework of right realism. Hence, the utilitarianism of Jeremy Bentham and Cesar Beccaria remains a relevant social philosophy in policy term for using punishment as a deterrent through law, enforcement, the courts, and imprisonment.
Hello, my name is Ransel Alfie from Group 6. My topic is all about the conflict theory, the never-ending competition. So first of all, what is a conflict theory? Conflict theory developed by Karl Marx purports that due to society's never-ending competition for finite sources, it will always be in a state of conflict. The implication of this theory is that those in possession of wealth and resources will protect and hoard those resources, while those without will do whatever they can to obtain them. This dynamic means that there is a constant struggle between the rich and the poor. So, ang sabi dito, conflict theory daw is yung problema dahil sa hindi pagkapantay-pantay ng pagtingin sa isang komunidad o sa isang bansa. Ang mas napagbibigyan ng pansin, ang mas napagtutuunan ng atensyon ay may mga kakayanan o may mga pera at mas matataas na pwesto. What are the goals of conflict theory? First, conflict theory look for answers to the correlation of gender, race, with health and crime. So, ang conflict theory daw ay naghahanap ng sagot sa relasyon ng gender and race between wealth and crime. Theory focuses on the competition between groups within society over limited resources. So, ang conflict theory daw ay nag-focus siya sa labanan or pagko-compete ng mga groups sa society kahit na wala silang sapat na resources or pinagkukunan ng information. Number 3, views social and economic institutions as tools of the struggle between groups or classes used to maintain inequality and the dominance of the ruling class. So, tinitingnan niya yung social and economic, yung mga institutions na tool or gamit para ma-solve yung problema sa groups, classes, tsaka ma-maintain niya yung inequality or hindi pagkapantay-pantay na pagtingin or ng mga tao, hindi pantay-pantay na estado ng buhay ng tao dahil mas pinagtutuunan nga yung mga mas may mga pera at sila yung mas mataas. Number 4, examines any social phenomenon through the lens that there is a natural human instinct towards conflict. So, in-examine niya yung na meron daw, kailangan nilang patunayan na meron daw social phenomenon na nagpapatunay na nasa lahi na or natural na sa mga tao ang mga nag-aaway dahil sa hindi pagkakasundo-sundo. 5. Marx is not saying that conflict is good or bad, but instead that it is an avoidable aspect of human nature and helps explain why things are the way they are. Sinabi ni Marx na hindi daw, ang conflict daw ay pwedeng good and pwede rin bad. Pero, dahil hindi daw natin ito maiiwasan bilang isang tao. At natutulungan din itong i-explain o ipaliwanag sa atin kung bakit nangyayari yung mga bagay. Ay, sinasabi niya na ang mga bagay ay mangyayari kung talagang ito ay mangyayari. Examples of conflict theory are wars, violence, revolutions, forms of injustice, and discrimination. So, itong mga examples na yan ay yung mga, kung mapapansin nyo, yung palaging gulo na nagaganap dahil nga sa hindi pagkakaroon ng pantay-pantay na pagtingin sa kanila ng mga tao. At yung gobyerno ay pinapaboran kung sino lang ang may mga kakayanan at may mga pera. Additional infos. In terms of financial resources, governments seek to manage conflict by reallocating resources between the rich and the poor. So, sinasabi nga dito na in terms of financial resources o sa mga pinagkukunan ng mga financial, yung government daw ay naghahanap ng parang problema by reallocating resources or paghahanap ng resources sa pagiging mayaman, sa mayayaman at sa mahihirap. Government have several mechanisms for influencing the distribution of resources, including progressive taxes, minimum wages, incentives, special programs, social assistance, and regulations. Through various forms of conflict, groups will tend to attain differing amounts of material and non-material resources. So, dahil daw sa mga various forms of conflict, yung mga grupo daw ay na-achieve nila o nagkakaroon sila ng hindi pantay-pantay na amount ng mga bagay at kahit ano na hindi sila nagkakaroon. Tapos yung iba na may kaya ay nakakabili. So the theory is that if the wealth gap becomes too wide, social unrest will ensue. If the government doesn't help reduce the degree of inequality, conflict will run out of control and protest or even civil wars will break out. So sinasabi dito na ang theory daw na ito ay nag-focus sa wealth gap o sa pagkakaroon ng pera ng mga tao o hindi sa, mas nag-focus sila sa mga pera, sa kung sino yung mga may pera at sa wala. So yung mga walang pera or walang kakayanan, walang masyadong kakayanan, hindi sila nabibigyan ng pansin. At yung discrimination sa LGBTQ, sa community nila, parang hindi sila agree. So, syempre, yung mga members doon, magagalit sila. So, kung yung gobyerno natin, kung ang gobyerno sa isang bansa ay meron lang hindi pantay-pantay na pagtingin sa mga tao na nakatira doon sa bansang yon ay talagang magkakaroon ng gulo o ng mga problema, wars. So, hindi natin may iwasan yon. Dahil sinabi nga dito na ang gulo at hindi pagkakaintindihan at hindi balance na pagtingin ay kagawian na ng mga tao. Yun lamang po. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Gia Larca, and the topic that I'm going to discuss for today is a brief explanation of critical theory. Critical theory is defined as an approach to social philosophy that focuses on reflective assessment and critique or detailed analysis of society in order to reveal and challenge power structures. But first, let us define what power structure is. A power structure is an overall system of influence, meaning they are interconnected with each other between any individual or any other individual within selected group of people. In the simplest words, critical theory is a social theory that aims or that is oriented towards critiquing or changing the society as a whole. Critical theory, as it is known today, can be traced to Karl Marx's critiques of economy and society. It is greatly inspired by Karl Marx's theoretical formulation of the relationship between economic base and ideological superstructure that focuses on how power and domination operates within the society. Now, you might be wondering, what is base and superstructure? Both of these are concepts developed by Karl Marx. Base refers to the production forces, for example, are the materials and resources that generates the goods that society needs. And on the other hand, superstructure is all the other aspects in the society. Here in conflict theory, cultural and ideological sides of power and domination were explored to the pursuit of finding the social forces, namely the norms, values, ideas, behavior of the society that could prevent the people from understanding how power affects their lives. And that is the end of my brief discussion of critical theory. Thank you.